Picture this. It's 1997, WWE is getting absolutely destroyed in the ratings, and every single Monday night, WCW with Hulk Hogan, Goldberg, and the NWO is not just beating them, but flat out embarrassing them. Sponsors are leaving, wrestlers are jumping ship, and people inside the company genuinely believed it was over. And then a broken down, foul-mouthed, beer-drinking redneck from Victoria, Texas walked in and flipped the entire industry upside down. Because this is the story of how one feud, one perfect feud, didn't just save WWE, it redefined professional wrestling forever. To truly understand why Stone Cold vs. Vince McMahon hit the way it did, you've got to understand how desperate things actually were. Because in 1995 and 1996, WCW was winning the Monday Night War week after week. Nitro was fresh and exciting and packed with star power. While WWE's roster was thin, their champion Bret Hart was great in the ring but wasn't moving the needle with casual fans. Shawn Michaels was brilliant but polarizing backstage, and the whole product felt safe, predictable, and tired. And meanwhile, over in WCW, Hulk Hogan went heel and turned the world upside down. The NWO became a full cultural moment. People were wearing NWO shirts to school, to work, to church, and WWE simply could not touch it, no matter what they tried. Fake Diesel, fake Razor Ramon, rushing Mankind onto TV. Nothing clicked, nothing landed, until Steve Austin won the King of the Ring in June 1996 and cut a promo that changed everything. Standing in that ring and saying, "The first thing, Jake, you need to do is go out there and get yourself a real finisher, and then you ought to go to the Book of Psalms and read the 23rd Psalm. And when you're done, you'll be able to look up here and see Stone Cold Steve Austin 3:16 says I just whipped your ass." And that promo wasn't scripted. It came straight from Austin's gut. And the moment those words left his mouth, something electric ran through that building. Because fans didn't know exactly what they were cheering. They just knew it was real, raw, unfiltered, and human in a way wrestling almost never was. But Austin still needed a villain worthy of him. Someone who could go toe-to-toe on the mic. Someone audiences would genuinely and deeply hate. Someone who embodied everything the average working person resented. And that's when Vince McMahon stepped forward. Not TV announcer Vince McMahon, not the corporate suit smiling behind the commentary booth, but the real Vince McMahon. The boss, the billionaire, the man who controlled whether your career lived or died. The man who told grown adults what to wear, what to say, and how high to jump. And that character had been sitting right there the whole time. It just took Steve Austin to drag it kicking and screaming into the light. The feud didn't explode overnight though. It built slowly, and that's a big part of why it worked so beautifully. Because Austin had been a thorn in management's side for months, refusing to follow orders, attacking people when he wasn't supposed to, disrespecting authority at every turn. And Vince, still publicly playing the friendly announcer role, was clearly getting more and more irritated by the week. But the real ignition point came during the 1997 Survivor Series with the infamous Montreal Screwjob, where Bret Hart got screwed out of the WWE title on live television. Shawn Michaels walked out with the belt, and Vince McMahon was forced for the very first time to drop the announcer act completely. And the whole world finally saw who he really was. A ruthless, controlling owner who did whatever it took to protect his business, with fans, wrestlers, and loyalty be damned. And Steve Austin looked at that and thought, "Perfect, that's my guy." And by early 1998, the character of Mr. McMahon was fully born, with Vince leaning into it completely. The chest-puffed arrogance, the condescending sneer, the voice dripping with contempt for anyone beneath him. While Austin became the rebellious employee every working-class person in America wished they could be. And the formula was simple, timeless, and undeniably powerful. Boss versus worker, authority versus freedom, suit versus beer. What made this feud legendary wasn't just one match or one single moment. It was a collection of moments that kept topping each other week after week. Austin stunning Vince on live television in front of a crowd that completely lost their minds. Austin driving a beer truck to ringside and hosing McMahon down with thousands of gallons of beer while Vince stood there soaked to the bone, sputtering, furious, and humiliated on national television. The hospital segment where Austin stalked a bedridden Vince through hallways threatening him with a bedpan in one of the funniest and most brilliantly produced pieces of wrestling television ever made. And then there was WrestleMania 14 in March of 1998, where Austin won the WWE Championship for the very first time. Mike Tyson counted the three. The building erupted like nothing before it. And in that one moment, WWE officially turned the tide of the Monday Night War. Not with a cartoon gimmick, not with a recycled character, but with a real story about a real conflict between two real personalities whose chemistry was absolutely undeniable. Here's what most people still don't talk about enough, though. This feud worked because it was relatable in a way professional wrestling almost never is, because everyone has had a boss. They couldn't stand. Everyone has swallowed their pride, bitten their tongue, and smiled at someone they despised because they simply had to. And Stone Cold Steve Austin was the version of yourself that didn't. He said what you wished you could say. He did what you wished you could do. He stunned the boss, drank a beer standing over his unconscious body, and walked away grinning. And that's not just a wrestling storyline. That's a fantasy, a deeply human one. And WWE sold it with absolute perfection. And Vince McMahon, to his massive and lasting credit, committed to it fully without ever protecting himself, getting humiliated, beaten up, poured on, and dragged through every kind of creative indignity imaginable. And he loved every second of it because he understood that being the greatest villain in the history of professional wrestling was its own extraordinary kind of greatness. Stone Cold vs. Vince McMahon wasn't just the feud that saved WWE. It was the moment professional wrestling genuinely grew up, proving that the best stories in this business aren't about superheroes or monsters, but about people, about bosses and workers, about power and defiance, about control and chaos. And somewhere out there right now, Steve Austin is cracking open a cold one and smiling, because he knows better than anyone that sometimes the greatest thing you can do is look your boss dead in the eye, hit him with a stunner, crack a beer over his chest, and remind the whole world that nobody, and I mean nobody, tells Stone Cold Steve Austin what to do. So if this video hit different for you, smash that like button, drop a comment below telling me your favorite Austin vs. McMahon moment, subscribe if you're new, and remember, that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so.